Right now, somewhere in the world, someone is thinking about another person. They can't stop. That person's face keeps appearing in their mind, uninvited. Their heart beats faster when they hear that name. They feel something that seems completely beyond their control. They think it's a modern feeling. It isn't. It's at least 300,000 years old. And the science of how it got inside us changes everything we think we know about what love actually is. And why, no matter how many times it hurts us, we keep going back up. This is the region that produces dopamine, the chemical that gives you energy, focus, motivation, and craving. It is the same system that activates when you're starving and you smell food, the same system that fires an addiction. Love isn't a feeling, it's a drive. Your brain treats it the same way it treats hunger and thirst. And just like hunger, you cannot simply decide to stop feeling it. Here's what Fisher said: that stopped everyone cold. Intense romantic love is a cross-cultural universal. Every human society on Earth, in every era of recorded history, has had a word for it, a story about it, a song about it. It is not a Western invention. It is not a modern luxury. It was built into us over millions of years. To do with flowers and candlelight. So how did it get there? You have to go back, a long way back. Before language, before fire, before tools. Back to when our ancestors were essentially very clever apes, living in small groups, competing for survival every single day. In those early groups, love as we know it didn't exist. Strong alpha males mated freely with whoever they chose and left. It wasn't tender, it was simply power. The biggest male got the most mates, everyone else made do. This is not a comfortable thing to sit with, but it's where we came from. So the question is, what changed? How did we get from that world, a world of brute competition, to a world where a person lies awake at night, thinking about someone who smiled at them across a room? The answer starts with the most unlikely of heroes, the weak ones. A revolution occurred, led not by the powerful, but by the overlooked. Men who had no hope of overpowering the dominant members of their group tried something different. Instead of fighting for a woman and losing, they chose one woman, brought her food, protected her, and stayed. And she chose them back. Think about what that moment meant, somewhere in the ancient past, for the first time in human history. A man looked at a woman not as something to be won, but as someone to come home to. That change in behavior had enormous consequences. Pair-bonded couples raised children who survived, the fighters kept fighting, the providers kept providing, and over thousands of generations, love won. This was the first revolution in human history. Nobody declared it, nobody celebrated it. But it changed our species more profoundly than any war, any invention, any empire ever would. And it brought something genuinely new into the world, something that had never existed before in any creature. Obsessive thinking, the feeling that someone is camping in your head, the intense focus on one particular person above everyone else, the craving, the elation, the mood swings. These weren't accidents of the human brain. These were features carefully built by evolution to keep two people focused on each other long enough to raise a child, long enough to survive. But love isn't only a brain state, it's also a behavior, and the ways ancient humans expressed it are stranger and more familiar than you'd expect. In prehistoric times, attractive rocks were given as gifts during courtship. To give a beautiful stone meant you had found something rare, something you could have kept, and you chose to give it away instead. These rocks had unusual colors, unusual shapes. The point was never the rock, the point was the message. I thought of you, I chose you. This is the oldest love letter in the world, written in stone, delivered by hand. In northwest Russia, they found fragments of decorative objects that had been deliberately broken and worn by two separate people, almost exactly like matching jewelry. Two individuals, tens of thousands of years ago, had taken a single object, split it between them, and carried half of it wherever they went. Something that said, without words, part of me belongs with you. We didn't invent matching jewelry, we remembered it. Now the question nobody wants to ask, if love has always existed and it runs this deep, why does it so often end? In ancient hunter-gatherer societies, people tended to have roughly 3 significant partnerships over the course of their lives. Not one great love, a series of deep bonds, each real, each genuine, each eventually ending. Helen Fisher spent years studying this pattern across cultures and found something that is either comforting or unsettling. Depending on how you look at it, the peak time for a couple to separate was around 4 years together. Not randomly, specifically 4 years. 4 years in the ancient world was roughly how long it took to get a child through its most vulnerable period of early infancy. Love, in its original design, may not have been built to last a lifetime. It was built to last long enough, and then the brain slowly, quietly, was ready to fall again. But perhaps the most astonishing discovery of all came from ancient DNA. In 2017, scientists from the University of Cambridge and the University of Copenhagen sequenced the genomes of individuals buried at Sungheir, a site in Russia inhabited roughly 34,000 years ago. What they found surprised everyone. The people buried together were genetically no closer than second cousins, even the two children laid in the same grave. These ancient people were not simply pairing with whoever was nearby. They were deliberately reaching beyond their immediate group to find a partner, consciously choosing, and the elaborate jewelry and ornaments buried alongside them suggest they had ceremonies to mark it. Rituals, rules, traditions. Something that looked to researchers remarkably like a wedding. Weddings are at least 34,000 years old, possibly much older. We tend to think of love as something that happened to us, something that arrived unexpectedly. We talk about falling into it, as if it were an accident, as if we had no say. But love was built, piece by piece, over millions of years, by the men who brought food instead of throwing punches, and by the women who chose loyalty over power, by two people who broke a stone ornament in half and carried a piece of each other wherever they went, by communities that crossed great distances to find someone worth choosing. The next time a face appears in your mind, uninvited. The next time your heart moves without your permission, you're not just experiencing a feeling, you're experiencing the oldest survival technology our species ever created. Still running, still working, exactly as designed.